Here's something that will haunt you once you understand it. Every person who says they love you might actually love a stranger. They love the version of you that laughs at their jokes, agrees with their opinions, and never reveals the messy complexity that lives beneath your carefully curated surface. They love the you that shows up when you're performing happiness, hiding your struggles, and pretending that life is easier than it actually is. But do they love the you that exists at 3 a.m. when the mask comes off and you're left alone with thoughts you'd never say out loud? Do they love the you that feels inadequate, confused, angry, or desperately lonely sometimes? Do they love the you that has unpopular opinions, difficult emotions, and needs that might inconvenience their comfortable image of who you are? Carl Jung understood something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You cannot be genuinely loved by someone who has never genuinely seen you. And most people, including the people closest to you, have never seen you at all. They've seen your performance, they've seen your persona, they've seen the carefully edited version of yourself that you present to earn approval and avoid rejection. But you, the real you, the complex, contradictory, sometimes difficult person you actually are, that person remains invisible, unloved, and desperately lonely, even in rooms full of people who claim to care about you. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But there's something even more terrifying, the possibility that no one will accept you completely if you show yourself completely. So you don't. You hide. You perform. You show people just enough authenticity to feel connected, but never enough to risk rejection. And in doing so, you guarantee the very isolation you're trying to avoid. Let's explore Jung's most challenging insight, that the love you think you're receiving might be the very thing preventing you from ever being truly loved. Jung spent his life studying the human psyche, and one of his most profound discoveries was that most people live in what he called the prison of personas, carefully constructed identities designed to earn approval rather than express authenticity. Your persona is the mask you wear in social situations, the version of yourself you present to the world, the character you play to make others comfortable. Jung understood that developing personas isn't optional. It's a survival mechanism that every person must develop to navigate social relationships and cultural expectations. But he also observed that most people become so identified with their personas that they forget there's a real person underneath the mask. When someone says they love you, what are they actually loving? Jung would ask. Are they loving your authentic self, or are they loving your performance of an acceptable self? This distinction isn't academic. It's the difference between genuine connection and elaborate mutual deception. Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But what if the thing that irritates you most is the growing suspicion that the people who claim to love you have never actually met you? What if your deepest fear is that their love is conditional on your continued willingness to hide everything about yourself that might threaten their comfort?" Let's examine how this dynamic of invisible authenticity plays out in different relationships. Romantic relationships. You fell in love during the courtship phase when both of you were performing your best selves. Now, years later, you both feel like strangers because neither of you has ever revealed the parts of yourselves that don't fit the romantic ideal. You're lonely in love because you're both in love with people who don't exist. Family dynamics. Your family loves the role you play in their system. The responsible one, the funny one, the successful one, the caretaker. But they've never seen who you are when you're not fulfilling that function. Their love feels conditional because it is conditional. It depends on your continued performance of their expectations. Friendships. Your friends appreciate your availability, your positivity, your willingness to listen to their problems without burdening them with your own. But you feel invisible in these relationships because you've never tested whether they would still want your company if you showed up as someone who needs support, rather than someone who provides it. Professional relationships. Your colleagues respect your competence, your reliability, your professional demeanor. But you feel like a fraud because you know they've never seen you struggle, doubt yourself, or admit that you don't have all the answers. Their appreciation feels hollow because it's based on a performance of confidence you don't always feel. Social circles. Your community admires your success, your apparent happiness, your seemingly perfect life. But you feel profoundly alone because you know that their admiration would disappear if they saw your private struggles, your moments of failure, or your times of genuine vulnerability. Jung observed that in each of these relationship types, people are loving and being loved for their personas rather than their authentic selves. This creates what he called the loneliness of the loved, the specific pain of being surrounded by people who care about you while feeling fundamentally unknown and unseen. You're loved, but you're not seen. And Jung understood that love without being seen isn't really love at all. It's appreciation for a performance, attachment to an illusion, or affection for a role you're playing. Jung wrote, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." But when you look inside your own heart, you often discover something terrifying. You've become so good at performing for others that you're not sure who you actually are beneath the performance. You've hidden your authentic self so thoroughly that you've lost touch with it yourself. You've become invisible not just to others, but to yourself. This is what Jung called persona possession, when you become so identified with your mask that you forget you're wearing one. You start to believe that your performance is your identity, that your acceptable traits are your entire personality, that your public image is your true self. But authentic love requires what Jung called the courage to be disliked, the willingness to show people who you really are, even when that risks their rejection, disappointment, or withdrawal. Most people can't summon this courage because the risk feels too high. What if they see the real you and decide they don't like what they find? What if your authenticity threatens their comfort? What if being seen means being rejected? But Jung understood that these risks, though real, pale in comparison to the guaranteed suffering of remaining invisible. When you hide your authentic self to avoid the possibility of rejection, you guarantee the reality of isolation. You ensure that no one can ever truly love you because no one has ever truly met you. Jung identified several specific ways that invisibility prevents genuine love. Projection. Attraction. When you hide your authentic self, people project their fantasies, needs, and ideals onto you. They fall in love with their projection rather than your reality. When your real self inevitably contradicts their projection, they feel betrayed, and you feel misunderstood. Performance exhaustion. Maintaining a persona requires constant energy and vigilance. You become exhausted from monitoring your behavior, suppressing your authentic responses, and performing acceptability. This exhaustion leaks into your relationships, making genuine connection difficult even when opportunities arise. Intimacy avoidance. When you're committed to remaining invisible, you unconsciously avoid situations that might expose your authentic self. You keep conversations surface level, avoid vulnerability, and maintain emotional distance even in supposedly close relationships. Approval addiction. When your sense of worth depends on others' approval of your persona, you become addicted to their validation while remaining terrified of their potential rejection. This addiction makes genuine love impossible because you're always performing for approval rather than connecting authentically. Emotional disconnection. Hiding your authentic self requires disconnecting from your genuine emotions, needs, and desires. This disconnection makes it impossible to share your real experience with others, preventing the emotional intimacy that genuine love requires. Authenticity phobia. The longer you remain invisible, the more terrifying authenticity becomes. You develop a phobia of being seen because you've lost practice in showing yourself and lost confidence that your real self is worthy of love. Jung understood that each of these patterns creates a self-reinforcing cycle. The more you hide, the more isolated you feel, and the more isolated you feel, the more you believe you need to hide. Breaking this cycle requires what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming conscious of your authentic self and gradually making that self visible to others. But Jung also warned that individuation is not a comfortable process. It requires dismantling the persona that has kept you safe, risking relationships that were based on your performance, and facing the possibility that some people will not love your authentic self. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But becoming who you truly are means accepting that not everyone will love who you truly are. It means choosing authenticity over approval, visibility over safety, and genuine connection over comfortable illusion. This choice is terrifying because it's irreversible. Once you start being authentic, you can't unsee the difference between genuine love and persona appreciation. Once you start being visible, you can't go back to the comfortable invisibility of performance. But Jung believed this choice was essential for psychological health and genuine relationship satisfaction. He observed that people who learn to be visible, who develop the courage to show their authentic selves, often go through predictable stages. Stage 1. Recognition. You begin to recognize the difference between your persona and your authentic self. You notice when you're performing versus when you're being genuine. You start to see how much energy you spend on maintaining appearances. Stage 2. Experimentation. You begin testing small moments of authenticity. You share a genuine opinion, admit a struggle, or reveal an unpopular preference. You start gathering data about how people respond to your real self. Stage 3. Differentiation. You begin distinguishing between people who can handle your authenticity and people who can only appreciate your persona. You start investing more energy in relationships that welcome your genuine self. Stage 4. Integration. You develop the ability to be authentically yourself while still functioning effectively in social situations. You learn to be visible without being inappropriate or inconsiderate. Stage 5. Selective vulnerability. You become skilled at choosing when, where, and with whom to be fully visible. You develop discernment about which relationships can handle your authenticity and which ones serve other purposes. Jung believed that reaching stage 5 was essential for experiencing genuine love and authentic connection. At this stage, you're no longer desperate for everyone's approval because you know the difference between appreciation for your performance and love for your being. You're no longer terrified of rejection because you understand that someone who rejects your authentic self was never capable of loving you anyway. They were only capable of loving their idea of you. You're no longer exhausted from constant performance because you've learned to be yourself in relationships that matter while maintaining appropriate boundaries in relationships that serve other functions. But Jung also understood that this process requires grieving the loss of persona-based relationships that can't survive your authenticity. When you stop performing, some people will lose interest in you. When you start being real, some people will decide they preferred the fiction. When you become visible, some people will discover they don't actually like what they see. This loss is painful, but Jung believed it was also liberating. These people were never loving you anyway. They were loving their fantasy of you, their projection onto you, or their need for you to remain a certain way. Losing their pseudo-love makes space for genuine love from people who can see you fully and choose you anyway. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But this transformation can only happen when both personalities are actually present, when both people are visible rather than hidden behind personas. When you're invisible, no real meeting can occur. You might have pleasant interactions, comfortable relationships, and mutual appreciation, but you won't have the transformative connection that Jung believed was possible between two authentic human beings. The people who will love your authentic self might be different from the people who appreciate your persona. They might be fewer in number, but they'll be deeper in connection. They might not give you the constant validation that persona-based relationships provide, but they'll give you something more valuable: the experience of being known and chosen for who you actually are. Jung observed that once people experience genuine love, love that's based on being truly seen, they can never again be satisfied with persona-based appreciation. The difference becomes too obvious, too important, and too meaningful to ignore. You start to prefer one authentic connection over a dozen surface-level relationships. You start to choose visibility over safety, honesty over approval, and genuine love over comfortable illusion. This doesn't mean you abandon all social conventions or become inappropriately vulnerable in every situation. It means you develop the wisdom to know when authenticity serves connection and when it doesn't. You learn to be strategically visible, choosing when to show your real self and when to maintain appropriate boundaries. But most importantly, you stop betraying yourself for the sake of others' comfort. You stop hiding who you are to earn love that isn't actually available to you. Jung's final insight was that being seen is a prerequisite for being loved. But being seen requires first seeing yourself clearly enough to know what you're revealing. You can't be authentic if you don't know who you authentically are. You can't be visible if you're hiding from yourself as much as you're hiding from others. The journey to being loved begins with the courage to know yourself fully, your light and your shadow, your strengths and your weaknesses, your gifts and your limitations. Only when you can see yourself clearly can you begin to show yourself to others. Only when you can accept yourself completely can you risk the possibility that others might not. You can't be loved if you're not seen, but you can't be seen if you're not willing to be visible. The choice is yours. Remain invisible and guarantee isolation, or become visible and risk rejection in service of the possibility of genuine love. Jung would say the choice is obvious. The love that comes from being truly seen is worth the risk of being truly rejected. Because pseudo-love based on performance will never satisfy the deep human need for authentic connection. And the energy you spend hiding your real self could be spent sharing it with people who are capable of loving what they find. If this exploration of authenticity and genuine love resonates with you, subscribe for more insights into Jung's revolutionary understanding of the authentic self and the courage required to be truly known. Share in the comments, have you experienced the difference between being loved for your persona and being loved for your authentic self? What did that teach you about the relationship between visibility and genuine connection? Remember, you can't be loved if you're not seen, and you can't be seen if you're not willing to show yourself. The people who matter will love what they find, and the people who don't weren't capable of real love anyway.